Hello, welcome back to Baking Bakers. Today we're going to tackle a homemade apple pie with a homemade crust. I'm going to start with the crust, and you certainly don't need to make a homemade crust. You can buy them in the refrigerator section of your grocery store, but sometimes I like to make my own, so I'm going to do that today. I start with 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour that has been spooned and leveled. To that, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 2 tablespoons of white sugar, all right, mix that around a little bit. I have prepared some ice water for later in the process. You want your water to be super cold. You want your butter to also be cold. I'm using a mix of shortening and butter. I have 8 tablespoons of butter flavored shortening and 12 tablespoons of butter. And this is going to make a two crusted pie. So we're going to take a pastry blender and we're going to work that in. Because the butter is cold, it's going to take a little bit of elbow grease. So we're just going to keep working this in. I'll try to show you a little bit better. And I don't want this to be completely worked in. We want to keep some various sizes, up to pea-size pieces of butter. Your pastry blender is going to get clogged, and you can just take a knife and clean it out periodically, or you can just keep smushing it all back down and it'll eventually go back in. Getting there. Almost there. Oh, very good. I never claimed to be neat. All right, I'm pretty happy with the way this looks. You know, with my pastry blender. See how you can see some bits of butter? That's what we want. Now, to that, I have an egg in here that I beat just a little bit with a fork. It's just one large egg. I'm going to beat it just a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of this mixture in my crust. That's a light tablespoon. We'll do one more. I'm going to save the rest of it for the top of my pie crust. Then I'm going to take my water, my ice cold water. I want it to be I think I have some, yeah, over here. I'm going to take my ice cubes out, but I want to make sure I have a 1/4 cup. I'm just under, so I will add just a touch more. Okay. Need to grab a spoon. I'm going to add this ice cold water, and I'm going to work this together just until it comes together away from the sides of the bowl. You don't want to overwork pie crust. It's possible that you might need to add just a tiny bit more water. And you can do that a teaspoon or a tablespoon at a time, and be real careful if you're using a tablespoon. I think this needs just a tiny bit. So I'm going to take just a teaspoon. And there's still quite a bit of crumbs, so I'm going to do one more. Maybe 1.5. All right. Now I'm going to get rid of my spoon. I'm going to sort of knead this together with my hand into a ball. I don't want to overwork it, just a little bit until I can get it into a nice ball. Move all this out of the way. I have some saran wrap here. I'm going to divide this dough into 2, hopefully. And I'm going to try to make it into a disc, just a little bit of a flattened round disc. And I'm going to put that on my saran wrap. I'm going to seal that up and do my other one. See how you can see that butter in there? That's what we want. All right, I'm going to seal this one up, and I'm going to put them in the refrigerator while we make our pie. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, for our apples, we're peeling them with this handy dandy apple peeler corer. If you don't have one of these, you can just peel them and slice them thinly. I have done a couple. I wanted to make sure it was working okay. I just put my apples right on this skewer and take them right through the peeling. You want to use a nice firm apple when you're making apple pie. You don't want to use something soft like a Macintosh because it will just turn into mush, more like applesauce. They smell good. All right, last one. Get my apple core off my counter. You have to put it on pretty tight so it doesn't twist, and then I have trouble getting it off. There we go. I have an enormous bowl to fit all these apples in. I gotta find my knife. Okay, so they do need to be trimmed up just a tiny bit. Take this top off and peel the little bit of peeling that's still on there, but they are nice and thin, and so I just like to cut them in half and then put them in my bowl. Jeez, keep hitting my bowl. Gonging the bell. These are going to cook down a ton, which is why you want to start out with way more than you think you need. I'm just going to separate these. All right, I have a lemon, a small lemon. I don't have a big one, but I have a small one. I'm going to zest it just a little bit onto here. Cut that in half. Oh, I better not squeeze it right into the pan. I'll lose my seeds. I get a bowl. I'd like about 2 tablespoons of juice. I'm not sure I'm going to get it from this little lemon. Yeah, pretty good. We're just going to pour that over. Oh, a little bit of peeling. I'm going to try and separate these so they're not all stuck together. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more lemon juice. I don't have another lemon, but I have some juice. Hands are slippery, can't open it. Okay. I'm going to clear some stuff away and then I'll be back with the next step. Okay, next thing we're going to do is make our coating for our apples. So I have a medium-sized bowl here. I'm going to add to that 3/4 cup of brown sugar, 3/4 cup of white sugar, 5 5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, 3/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and a 1/2 teaspoon of cardamom. And then 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm going to mix that together. Okay, I'm going to bring my apples over, and I'm going to put this mixture right on top of the apples and mix them up well. You just want to make sure that the apples are all coated well. Now, this is where this recipe is a little different from most recipes you might be familiar with. Instead of putting this in our pie crust and putting it in the oven, we're going to cook these apples on the stove until they're fork tender. So I have a skillet, and I'm going to put them in here. Hopefully they'll all fit. All right, we're going to cook these on low to medium, and once we get it up to temp, we'll cook them for about 20 minutes until they're fork tender, but we're going to watch them very closely because they can scorch pretty easily. So I'm going to take them over the stove and I'll meet you there. Okay, I'm going to turn my stove on to medium until it gets up to temp. Find my spatula. And my lid. And we're going to stick pretty close to these. We are not going to leave them alone. We're going to stir them every 3 to 5 minutes the whole time they're cooking. So we will check in with you periodically. Our apples are starting to cook. So I'm going to turn the temperature down, and we're going to make sure that they don't scorch. We're going to stay real close. All right. This has been cooking for about 10 minutes. I've stirred it once or twice. I'm going to stir it again. It's looking really good. I have the heat turned down to low. And we want these to be cooked till they're fork tender. They're not quite there. Or to whatever al dente-ness you like your apple pie to be, because they will not, once we put them in the pie and we put them in the oven, they will not cook down anymore. So we want to cook them to the density that we want while they're on the stove. Let's check these again. Oh my goodness, they look fantastic. They are perfect. I'm going to turn this off. The hardest part about this next part is these have to cool completely before we put them in the pie shell, and then they have to chill for another 30 minutes before we bake them. So I'm going to pour them back in my large bowl. Get a pot holder here. We have a nice cold day today, so I am going to just put them back in this bowl, cover them, and set them out on my porch. I am going to add just a teaspoon of vanilla. You don't want to add your vanilla too early or it will just cook right out of them. So this is what they look like. We're going to cool them completely, and meanwhile we're going to finish our pie crusts. So I'll be back shortly. Okay, I got one of my pie crust discs out of the refrigerator. I'm leaving the other one in until I need it. I'm going to open it up. I have a piece of parchment paper down on my counter, and I have just a little bit of dampness under it to help it stick so it doesn't move. I'm going to open this up. Maybe. Grab some flour. Just going to dust this. Let's start out lightly. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to flour this. And then I'm going to flour the top. Okay. I'm going to put another piece of parchment over it and see how that works. I have a marble rolling pin that the handles fell off years and years ago. I've had it for 40 years. It's my favorite thing. I love it. It's nice and heavy. And so I'm just going to start rolling this between these two pieces of parchment until it's a little bit flat. And I keep changing the direction of my rolling pin. Okay, I'm going to take this top piece of parchment off. Now you see it's cracking a little bit. That's normal. All you have to do is just kind of put it back together. If you need to, you can use just a little bit of water. I'm going to put some more flour on and flour my rolling pin. And I just want to keep rolling from the center out. You can see the, oh, tore it. You can see those nice big pieces of butter. Some people use all butter in their pie crust. Some people use all shortening. Some people use lard. I don't like to use all butter because the shortening gives it a little more structure. Grab my pie plate, lay it down, see where we're at. I need it to be just a little bit bigger than my pie plate. And you can always patch it in as much as you need to. that's pretty good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hand under the parchment, right in the middle of my pie pan, and flip it over. And then I'm going to carefully peel off my paper. All right, and then I'm gonna scooch it into the bottom nicely. Now, because I have a nice wide pie plate, I'm just gonna cut this extra off with a knife along the edge. If I had just a regular pie plate with just a small lip, I would cut it a little bit farther out. So, I'm gonna find a knife. Okay, now I'm going to put my parchment back in there, and I'm going to put it back in the refrigerator until we're ready to use it, and I'm not going to get the other one out until we need it. So, I'll see you in a bit. Okay, we're out here on the porch. Gonna check, oh, it's still steaming. Yeah, it's definitely not cool enough yet. We're gonna let it cool a little bit more. But it is cold out here. We had snow. Let's go back in the house. You guys want to see another little project I'm working on in between? Don't tell anyone. I finished this quilt top and I've got the bottom ready to go. And I just have to make the quilt sandwich and then I can do the quilting. So that's what I do in my other spare time. Okay, our pie filling is just about ready to be put in the pie shell. So I am ready to roll out our top crust for our pie. Okay, I got my other pie dough disc that's been in the refrigerator out. I have another piece of parchment paper. And again, I like to just moisten underneath it a little bit. It helps keep it from scooching away from me. I'm going to put just a little bit of flour on our work surface. Also going to flour the dough a little bit. I have the same piece of parchment that I used for the top. I'm just going to reuse that for the bottom. It was for the bottom. This is the top. Just going to reuse it. I just keep going from the center out in different directions. All right, get this top off. Fix all these little cracks. Okay, I'm gonna get our apples. Our bottom pie crust has been in the refrigerator this whole time, so we have that out now. I'm gonna go ahead and put the apples right in there. Okay. Our apples have shrunken down to the perfect amount for this pie. A lot of pies, a lot of apple pies, and the other way that I make apple pie, you want to put dots of butter on it. This one does not need that. So I'm going to go ahead and see how well I am at flipping this top crust over our pie. And carefully remove that parchment. Okay, now I'm going to cut this extra off. Same way we did with the bottom. You can take these scraps and put them together, roll them out, put them on a pie tin, sprinkle them with, or pat them with butter, spread some butter, and then some sugar and cinnamon and bake them. I don't need that much sugar in my life right now, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, now I'm just going to carefully fold this top crust just a little bit over the bottom one. I am not super fancy. I just do what needs to be done. And I'm just going to pinch these edges. I like to sort of pinch it between my thumb and my forefinger and use my other forefinger as a spacing guide. Nothing fancy. Need some flour. When you're making a double crust pie, if you're using the full crust and not doing like a lattice pie, you need to make sure you have vents. So as soon as we get this fluting done, we'll make some vents in our pie so the steam can get out. One of the benefits of cooking your fruit down before you put it in the pie is oftentimes when you have raw apples in there and you put the top crust on and then the apples cook down and then you have a space between your top crust and your fruit. And that's not going to happen with this type of pie. The other thing is that when you're cooking apples in a pie or many fruits, they want to bubble up and come out, and you have to put something underneath to catch the drips so they don't go in your oven. And this doesn't do that as much. I still put something under it, but it doesn't do it as much. So I'm just going to do some slices on each side and then some little ones in the middle. Sometimes I like to do a little circle in the center. All right. Now, remember that egg that we had left from our pie crust? I'm going to add just a little bit of water, tablespoon. Mix that in. And then I'm going to brush this pie with the egg mixture, and that's going to give it a nice shiny top, nice and golden brown. And then I'm going to sprinkle, I have a jar that I just keep sugar and cinnamon mixed in case somebody wants it on toast. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of that on our pie. And I am going to put this in the refrigerator just until our oven heats up, and then we'll get it in the oven. It should actually stay in the refrigerator for 20 to 30 minutes. Sometimes I don't always leave it in that long, so I'll see you in a bit. Okay, got our pie out of the fridge. It's ready to go in the oven. I've preheated the oven to 425 degrees. I'm going to set my pie on a tray that I have lined with foil just in case it drips, so it catches any drips. We're going to put it in the oven at 425 for 15 minutes, and then we're going to lower the temp and we're going to cover it. So I'll see you in 15. Our timer's going off, so I'm going to turn the temperature down to 350. And then I'm going to take this piece of foil, I'm going to fold it in half, and then in half again. And I'm just going to cut the center part out. And we're going to cover our pie with that. It's looking good. But we don't want the crust, the edges to get too brown. So I'm just loosely putting this foil over it to cover the edges, just like that, and we'll put it back in the oven for 40 to 45 minutes. All right, and that should do it. I'll be back in a bit. Our timer just went off, so let's pull that pie out. This looks fantastic. The hardest part of this whole process is that now it really should cool for 4 hours before we eat it. I don't think that's going to happen, but it looks fantastic. And while this is a little more complicated than just throwing apples in a pie crust, it really gives a depth of flavor, and it's a beautiful pie, and everybody's gonna love it. So hope you are able to serve this at your Thanksgiving dinner. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Any comments, please hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time on Baking Bakers.